Hi class. So this is our picture of an animal cell. So now we're looking at one of our two eukaryotic cells. We're going to look at an animal cell and a plant cell. So notice first thing, we compare this back to our bacteria cell. This has a lot more complexity, right? There's a lot more stuff inside the cell, structure inside the cell, right? So that's one of the big differences between our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells is how much complexity there is. All right, so we'll start bottom right. Again, this cell is just going to have one surrounding layer, not three like the bacteria cell. This is the plasma membrane. Anything on this picture that we labeled on the bacteria cell, such as the plasma membrane, I'm not going to write functions up again because they're the same. If we see repeated parts, those parts are doing the same exact thing. So you can refer back to the previous set of notes you took for the bacteria cell or watch that video again to look at function for the plasma membrane. Right, and then inside the cell, the largest structure we see is this big purple round structure. That's called the nucleus. Okay, and this is where we have DNA. So the nucleus is the control center. On the bacteria cell, we saw something called a nucleoid. It's a different structure. It's got some similarities. They both contain DNA. They both function as a control center, but this nucleus is kind of the core control center DNA location for our eukaryotic cell. All right, this blue stuff that kind of wraps around the nucleus, it is a structure called the rough ER. Okay, the rough ER is going to transport proteins. Okay, the rough ER transport proteins. Hey, and if you remember back to our bacteria cell, do you remember what makes proteins? So what makes proteins are these little red dots that are inside the cell here. Those were called ribosomes. We saw those in the bacteria cell. And notice if you look, and it's actually easier to look at the top because all this blue color around the nucleus is the rough ER. So if you look at the rough ER that's on the top part of the nucleus, you can see it has little red dots on it. Right, so those dots on the rough ER are ribosomes. So the ribosomes are making the proteins, and then the rough ER is transporting those proteins. And it transports those proteins to this purple structure down here. It is called the Golgi complex. It kind of looks like a stack of pancakes. It's really like a set of membranes that are stacked up on top of each other. Okay, and the Golgi complex is going to sort, package, and distribute proteins. Okay, sort, package, and distribute proteins. So our protein processing is kind of three things. Ribosomes make them. The rough ER takes them to the Golgi complex. Then the Golgi complex will package them up and distribute to wherever they need to be. All right, this brown structure here, hey, this is called a lysosome. A lysosome is in this cell for recycling purposes. You know, the cell is it's kind of a working factory, right? And sometimes parts break down. And when parts break down, instead of just throwing it all away, there may be some things that we can recycle and reuse. So that's kind of what the lysosome does in this animal cell, is it'll break stuff down and allow the cell to recycle and reuse. All right, these orange structures, so I'm going to point to both. The one on the right that I pointed to at the top is cut open. If it's not cut open, it just looks like an orange, kind of like a bean inside this cell. These are called mitochondria. And mitochondria make ATP. Okay, so if you remember from our chemistry section, ATP is the energy currency inside cells. Right, so this animal cell, whatever it's doing that requires energy, it would be getting that from ATP. So these mitochondria kind of act as the powerhouse of the cell. They're building that ATP. Right, and then one last thing I want to point out here. I'm going to make this arrow kind of all the way across. So sorry to draw all the way across this, but this part here that looks like almost like a couple of barrels sitting underneath the nucleus. These are called centrioles. And they make these things called microtubules. Okay, the centrioles make microtubules. Okay, so these things, I'm going to draw a couple little arrows in here. So notice from these brown colored barrels, they're like these little, almost kind of look like little pieces of spaghetti sticking out. Those things are microtubules. And they're part of what's called the cytoskeleton of the cell. I'm not going to label that part, but the microtubules are important for the cell. That's all that matters. And the centrioles are where we're making those microtubules. All right, so there's our animal cell structure. Well, that's a lot more complex. It's got a lot more parts than we saw with the bacteria cell.